What's up, Navigating Academia family? This is Dr. J. Phoenix Singh coming at you to be able to answer a valued viewer's question. As always, I appreciate the love, so please do take a second and smash that like button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps the channel to be able to grow. You guys know me. My number one priority is to be able to help you guys out in your academic journey as much as I conceivably can as your personal academic mentor. Be sure, if you're interested in booking a one-on-one session with me, that you get in touch via the website in the description below. You can also email me if I don't have any consult appointments available. My email address is on that site as well. It's drphoenixsingh@gmail.com, and you can go ahead and book a session with me like that as well. We'll find some way to be able to get you into my schedule. I do book up really fast. Every single week, I only have 5 slots open that I routinely offer, and they usually get booked weeks and weeks in advance. So if you want to book a session and I got nothing on there, just send me an email. All right, we'll figure it out. So today I'm going to be answering a question from Larissa. So Larissa, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your question. Now, we all need to be celebrating with Larissa. Oftentimes in academia, everybody sees themselves in competition to be able to get grants and get awards and get publications and you name it, any kind of acknowledgement. But we all need to be excited for Larissa because she got into a program. So Larissa, congratulations to you. So this is the question that Larissa asked, okay? Larissa says, very grateful that you've taken your time to help those of us who needed this guidance. I poured over your videos like they were the answer on how to get into heaven, which was really, anyway, Daria and I read that or whatever when we were in Dominican Republic and we were laughing about it. We thought that was very sweet, so we appreciate it. And I'm happy to say I was accepted where I wanted to go. Freaking awesome. May I ask, in your opinion, is it best to stop working full-time to tackle my program? So this is the question from Larissa. Guys, this is a very natural question to ask. If you've gotten into any program, let alone the one that you've dreamt of going to, potentially your whole life, but usually, since at least you were an undergraduate, it's a very natural question to ask, okay, now I've gotten where I want to be, should I stop working full-time? Now, I'm assuming, Larissa, because you're asking, working full-time, that there was some kind of a gap between doing undergrad and going to grad school, or maybe even doing a master's degree and then going to a doctoral degree. I'm not sure based on your question. But at the end of the day, we need to think practically here, Larissa, okay? That's the most important thing. Student loans are a big deal. I'm in psych, right? So in psych, in terms of doctorates, you have multiple different types of doctorates, everything from a clinical psych PhD to a PsyD to a counseling psych PhD to an EDD, which is doctorate in education. There's a lot of different degrees that you can end up getting, but almost all of them come with some kind of student loan debt. Yes, sometimes there are different funding options to be able to at least partially offset it, at least pay for your tuition, for example. Some programs, and you should look into this, will even give you opportunities to make money by being a teacher's assistant, or what they call a GA, which is a graduate assistant. Sometimes you can apply for grad school. Usually they're micro grants. We're talking a couple $1,000s here. Won't make a big difference, but you can certainly apply to professional associations, especially if you're like me and you're an individual of color or you are any kind of a minority, right? Use it if you got it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not one of these people who's going to tell you, well, don't apply for scholarships if they're there, because I think that you should apply for them because the money's there and you should take advantage of that in a healthy way, okay? Just make sure that you're passing that love on after you've become wildly successful, Larissa, okay? So, here is the deal. So in terms of whether or not I think you should stop the program, some of these programs are going to be more funded than others. Then you're going to have some like PsyD programs, which are easier to get into than clinical psych PhD programs. However, the amount of student loan debt you're going to go into can be astronomical. And when I say astronomical, I'm talking about, in some cases, 6 figures, as high as over $200,000. Some students come out of PsyD programs in terms of student loan debt. I have other videos on this channel that I recommend you watching about how much the average psychologist or average person in behavioral health is going to end up making, whether you're something like a nurse or whether you're something like a social worker or a counselor or a doctoral level psychologist. You're going to be making different amounts of money. It's not a very sexy or chic thing to do what I'm about to recommend. It's very practical, and sometimes, grad school and just going through education in general, it's a very dream-oriented thing, right? And don't want to say pie in the sky. That sounds childish. But it is something where it's based on dreams and what we want to do with our life. But we have to think practically here, Larissa, right? And we need to think at the end of the day, kind of where do we want to be? What kind of house do you want to live in? What kind of car do you want to drive? How many kids do you want to have, if you want to have kids? Do you want to have to work to pay significant bills after kids come along? If you're a dad, do you want to be a stay-at-home dad? If you're a mom, do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? All of these things are practical financial considerations. If you do not already have a budget, please build a budget. At least for 3 months consecutively. Build a budget as most efficiently as you can. You can use these different apps like Every Dollar. Every Dollar is a free app that you can use that's from Dave Ramsey and his team. Love me some Dave Ramsey. If you don't know who he is, he's awesome. So if you happen to be in debt, I highly recommend Dave Ramsey and his work. But you need to take that into consideration. Having several $100,000 in student loan debt is no joke. Having $50,000 in student loan debt is no joke. I work one-on-one, Larissa, with literally dozens and dozens and dozens of you guys every single year. And it's a huge blessing for me. But I get a little bit scared for you guys when I end up hearing that people are doing a master's and they're planning on doing a doctorate and they already have incurred over 6 figures in debt. That really worries me because a lot of these gigs, a lot of these jobs, especially jobs, for instance, in behavioral health, don't pay some huge amount of money. People will end up telling me, Larissa, yeah, but I'll start a private practice. It's like, do you know what having your own company entails? You have to pay payroll taxes. You never usually think about payroll taxes when you're working, let's say, for a university. You got to pay payroll tax. You may have to have all sorts of different types of insurance depending on the jurisdiction in which you're living. You got to pay for the rent. You got to pay for all sorts of different technologies and softwares that you wouldn't have had to pay for otherwise, right? You may also have to pay for somebody to be able to help you out with tax preparation, you name it, right? So in the end, it's not as much money as you think. People think way too much about gross income in terms of businesses on private practice and not enough about costs, right? And you got to think about building that P&L statement, a profit and loss statement. Don't worry if you don't know a lot about business, neither did I, but you kind of learned it over time just by practically going through the steps, right? People are always thinking, I'm going to make $1 million. People are always thinking, I'm going to have this dream life and these things. And that's what we call the personal fable. It is left over from our time as an adolescent. All of us, 100% of us have it. It's this belief that my life is special. I'm the protagonist in my own movie, you name it. It's not sexy to think about it like that. It sounds awful to think, oh my gosh, the real world is, this harsh place and these things. And as has been said before by others who are much wiser than myself, the bad news is that the world is kind of just as bad as you think it is, but the good news is that you're a lot tougher than you might think you are, right? So the fact that you're working full-time right now, I think is awesome. You need to think, practically speaking, this career you're going to enter into, how much money are you going to be making relative to how much you're making now? Are there opportunities to be able to work part-time in terms of the program you're entering into? What are the demands that are going to be placed on you? If it's a doctoral program, it's going to be really hard to not do that full-time. I have colleagues who did doctoral programs part-time, and they did that for 12 years before they got their doctorate. That is crazy. 12 years is insane, right? So at the end of the day, should you totally quit? Maybe you're lucky enough to be able to have somebody else in your life who can help you out. Maybe a spouse or a parent or somebody like this, right? I do not recommend taking personal loans out. Sometimes the rates can be astronomical. I'm a big believer in living lean. After I sold my first company, I still lived like I didn't have a dime to my name for about 2 to 3 years. The reason being is that I wanted to feel hungry enough to be able to start my second business and also to be able to do this kind of work for you guys. And if I thought to myself, well, I don't have to work, I'd be sitting around like just kind of having no motivation and not doing anything. So I like the idea of having something to strive for. But at the same time, if you can't pay the rent, you can't put food in your belly, maybe you've got some munchkins at home and you can't put food in their belly, you really got to think comprehensively about this. But think about whether getting this degree is going to get you to where you want to be. I hate people doing master's or doctoral degrees that don't mean anything, right? You can get, a master's degree in, really niche things and all. It's because the universities are trying to take advantage of you. If you don't need the degree to be able to get ahead in your career, right? And you can always book a one-on-one session with me. We can go through and talk about it specifically. If it's just something where you want to have the master's or you want to have the doctorate, that is a foolish reason for getting the degree. I do not recommend doing that. I would actually drop out of the program, legit. Right? If it's something that you need the certification, you need the qualification to be able to get licensed in whatever the field is, or maybe you want to be an academic, right? And you want to be teaching at a university in these things, or you want to be doing high-level research, yeah, then you really do need to go to grad school. It's super important. But a lot of people these days, it's almost like seen like having like a Louis Vuitton bag, right? It is literally seen as like having a master's, having a doctorate. It's seen as this accessory, which is, really, really important in your life, when in actuality, I got 2 doctorates, right? I'm telling you, it's really not that important at the end of the day. Most important thing is how you think. Can you help other people? Can you build products and services that are actually going to facilitate other people's assistance and, ironically, other people's lives? And remember, at the end of the day, ironically, by helping other people get what they want, that's what gives you the best chance of you getting what you want, right? So whether you're working full-time or part-time, realistically, or not at all has to do with the current financial situation. You should not go to school full-time, incur massive amounts of student loan debt that you cannot afford to be able to pay off at the end of the day, not in the short term, right? It's also a bad idea in terms of entering into, this is my opinion, okay? Because financials are the number one source of divorce, entering into a marriage, if you're not married already, or a long-term relationship with someone who has massive, massive amounts of debt and has no practical way to be able to pay it off, or no practical plan to be able to pay it off, represents what is called an irresponsible allocation of capital. And that is very unattractive when it comes to relationships. And that's just me being honest. And this would be true for absolutely anybody, right? Knowing how to handle money is a critical skill, as you guys know. And as you can imagine, maybe you haven't had to, not you specifically, Larissa, I'm talking about any of the viewers, right? Maybe you haven't had to do that before. Maybe it's something where, your parents always took care of it. And I'm not blaming you or shaming you or saying that that's bad. I'm just saying that there's certain skill sets that all of us need to add in our lives at certain times, and this could be a great time to be able to do it. But all of us need to run the numbers, figure out what you need to be able to live the kind of life you want, and then I want you to work it backwards, okay? And that's going to be able to help you to decide, should you take on more student loan debt? Maybe somebody like a spouse or somebody like a parent can take on, more likely a spouse in this case, to be able to take on part of the burden. If that happens, you need to massively scale your lifestyle down, right? Dave Ramsey says you should not be going out to a restaurant, or you shouldn't be in a restaurant unless you're working in it, right? Like, cleaning dishes or being a server or something like that. I agree with that, right? I lived 3.5 years of my life running my first company, and I lived it like I had nothing. Like, I was total poverty, like eating ramen. I mean, like, you name it, right? I didn't take a salary for years. I was living with clothes that were like 10 years old and like falling off of me at the time, right? Because that's what it takes. If you really want to do it and you want to survive through it and not incur huge amounts of debt, because in the U.S. especially, I don't know, Larissa, if you're in the U.S. or not, having a significant amount of debt is seen as a totally normal thing, right? But that should not be something that's seen as normal. If you were to ask, would I rather have no debt or a Lamborghini? I would much rather have no debt whatsoever. It's very, very important, because otherwise you're like a slave to whoever you owe money to. So that's my recommendation. So take a look at kind of what you've got in your life right now in terms of ways to not incur, to be able to take on debt, right? In terms of tackling your program, what's the program going to look like? Can you maybe do the program part-time? There's a million other questions that I would have. Again, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email at drphoenixsingh@gmail.com. All my hourly rates are at www.jphoenixsingh.com. All those details down in the description below, and we can set something up. All right, Larissa, thank you so much for watching and for your kind words. I sincerely appreciate them. And to all of you out there in our community, God bless you guys. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.